large masses attract things. This is kind of what gravity is within the context of general relativity. I think in the markets, it's not exactly like that. You could say large things attract things, or large companies attract investors and their market caps expand. But what's really going on in markets is that strong things attract investors, strong companies. What is a strong company versus a weak company? I think this earnings season was a very good example of what is a strong company and what is a weak company. You can take a company like Facebook, on surface, very large, powerful, but has a very weak business model. A business model that is based on advertising, and even the advertising, it's not very sophisticated. It's kind of just stuff that Apple can undo with a bunch of tweaks in their iOS. And then you have, of course, the threat of TikTok and those types of things. So this is not a very strong business, even though they're portraying themselves, of course, as a very strong business. And then you have a company like Amazon, very, very strong. And of course, companies like Tesla and Apple also very strong. I want to talk a little bit about what is a strong business and what do we actually mean when we say that investors are attracted by strong businesses. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's February 5th, 2022. This is Krim Delco. For the year, the fund is now down 16.7%. The market's down 5.5%. We're underperforming by 11.2%. Since the last update, we are up about 4%, and the market is up about 1%. So let's jump right into it. I think I had already an earnings season podcast, and I want to double down here because what happened in the last couple of weeks in earnings season, in my view, is very telling. It's telling in many ways, and in particular, in the way that we had strong businesses like Amazon, for example, yesterday doing up extremely well on after earnings. And then we had businesses like Apple doing well, Microsoft doing well, Tesla. The business is doing well, the stock not so much, and now we'll talk about this. But we have strong businesses, and then we have weak businesses like Spotify, Facebook, PayPal, Peloton, and so on and so forth. Weak businesses. What is a weak business? What is a strong business? In my view, a weak business is a business that doesn't check any of the boxes that we have in our principal stack. And a strong business, vice versa, is one. A strong business is a business that you can actually navigate through tough times because you have a base that is the following. You have a lower cost with better value. This is fundamentally what a strong business is. They are able to provide you something at lower cost with better value. And that's where it really stops. And now, of course, the big questions are, how can you do lower cost? How can you do better value? You see a business like Spotify. What is the value of Spotify, really? Yeah, there's certainly a convenience factor there. But what are they doing to keep relentlessly lowering the cost to provide you better value? Actually, nothing. They're a streaming service. Good for them. It's like Kayak. They give you access to hotel prices, but there's a certain value to these businesses. I'm not saying they're worthless, but those are not, trillion-dollar businesses because they're not building a cost structure that is relentlessly innovating and bringing down costs to be able to produce even more and more and better value. This is what companies like Tesla are doing. Tesla has announced several times now, even again in this earnings call, that manufacturing, at-scale manufacturing, that being able to deliver at-scale products and services and iterate faster, this is another thing. A strong business has a way to iterate faster. Of course, companies like Netflix and Facebook are also iterating. So iteration itself is probably not everything you need. Iteration is fine, particularly on the startup phase, because there you're focused. The problem with large companies is that they iterate, but they're not focused. If you're not focused, and this is what recently on the Peter Abiel podcast, one of the guests said that the biggest asset of a startup is focus. And I thought that was a very good sentence because that's true. It's focus. And large companies like Facebook, they iterate and iterate and iterate. And next thing you know, there's TikTok. And Netflix is iterating. Next thing you know, there's YouTube eating their lunch. So there's a bit of a lack of focus. And the lack of focus comes, of course, from the lack of survivor of fear of death and all these kinds of things that a startup has. But let's get back to what is a strong business. A strong business in my film starts with the cost structure. The business is defined by the cost structure because the economics of the business are defined by their competitive response. And the best way to compete is always to have lower costs. It's always to have lower costs. So strong businesses are businesses that are relentlessly iterating around their cost structure and or are able to provide better value while they're doing that. And this is, of course, where Tesla comes in as, I would say, the strongest of all of them. Because Tesla is focused on a cost structure of very difficult to manufacture products and services. That's another thing. What Tesla is doing is very difficult. So it's really hard for competition to even start thinking about it. And this is something that the Ford CEO said on the earnings call. They have to start doing the same thing. They have to start iterating around production in very different ways, in ways that Tesla isn't, in ways that they aren't and Tesla is. So to summarize in this episode, I just wanted to focus on some of the earnings call results that we had, earnings season results. We had businesses like Spotify, Netflix, Facebook collapsing, even let's say Snap, which was up 50% after earnings, but it's still down 80% from the peak. So that's a weak business. If there are gyrations around this week up, this week down, it's a weak business. Even though I think even at Snap, there's some technological advancements that could make the business strong, such as all the virtual stuff, the stuff that you can sort of put virtual clothes on you and all that. They have, of course, a focus on that. And that, I think, is an interesting part of what could become the metaverse. So I think, again, it's relentless focus on cost, technology first. Those are simple things. I mean, you might think, yeah, of course, technology first. But what does that really mean? That means that when you show up at work, it's technology. That is the first thing you think about. It's solving engineering problems, which is the first thing you think about. You don't think about how to, let's say, I said that on my other podcast, Netflix hires people from other media companies. Well, they're not going to be technology first people. Facebook hires, philosophers that think about the ethics of Instagram. Well, they're not going to be technology first people. Facebook has done a good job with AI, they say. I'm not so sure. Is Jan LeCun really doing a good job there? What is he really doing? He's saying AI has been the greatest success at Facebook. Well, has it? What have they done? Other than, maximizing clicks on Instagram. So what is technology first? Tesla is relentlessly lowering the cost of making cars that are very difficult to make and very exciting also. They're very exciting cars. It's very difficult to make those cars. It's very difficult to drive around Moab Desert and be able to charge a car and be able to drive from Moab back to Salt Lake City and charge the car and then drive back to Reno and charge. Those are difficult things to solve. The payments, is the electricity available? Is the car going to last? What if something goes wrong? Thankfully, we didn't have anything going wrong. But these are all very difficult things to provide. Tesla's doing it and delivering it. So strong businesses are businesses where technology first is driven by the focus to relentlessly lower the cost and or increase the value of the product. And the strong businesses attract investors. We've seen this in this earnings season. Amazon is a strong business, relentlessly lowering the cost of AWS and the delivery service. We have Apple, of course, we all know what Apple is doing. And you can argue about what Apple is doing is maybe also on the brink, not as strong as other businesses, but nevertheless, it's not things like, network effects and all that stuff. That's not what makes a strong business, because look at Facebook. You can still be out-networked by TikTok. Network effects are not, all these guys going around, these VCs like Union Square, everyone invests in network effects like Twitter and Bitcoin. Yeah, it's fine. These are good things. But you have to relentlessly lower the cost, provide and or better services. This is what it's really about. It's technology first. You have to go back to the drawing board all the time. Businesses start at the drawing board, in the labs. That's where they start. That's not where they end, of course. That's not where they become trillion-dollar companies. But that culture has to remain with the business. And then you need to focus, and that's why I need founders like Elon Musk. Now, before I Before I end this episode, I just want to say, I think, for example, what's going on with Facebook is actually laudable. I said what Zuckerberg is doing with the metaverse is the right thing to do. It's painful, but it's the right thing to do. Maybe now is the time to realize that Facebook is a weak business. Investors have realized that. Doesn't mean it's over there. There's still, 500, 600, 700 billion of market cap left. So this is still fine. Just saying, as an investor, in the long term, when you're in the wealth creation business, better think twice about investing in companies that have network effects, MAUT, all these words. Think about, is it technology first? Is it a company that is putting technology first to relentlessly drive down costs? This is what it's all about. And then hopefully they're able to provide a certain service that also caters to a large market. If you have these things coming together, then we're talking about a big market and a big wealth creation opportunity. And this is exactly where we see Tesla. Thank you.